Hi, and welcome everybody to the Winner's Circle Sports Betting channel. It's our Tuesday afternoon edition. We're talking NFL playoffs, both conference championship games today, and who better to bring along with, by the way, my name is Ross Benjamin, and his name is Paul Bovi. Like I said, who better to bring along to discuss the NFL postseason than Mr. Bovi? And Paul, how are you, man?
Good, Ross. I missed you last week, and I hope you had a successful weekend. Mine was pretty good. So, looking forward for more winners coming up in these conference championships and on to the Super Bowl. So, let's get it on.
Right on. And no, I did not have a successful weekend. Actually, I had a horrible weekend with my picks. Folks, I said this on the morning show, and I'll say it again. I beat on my chest over the last 5 months. I've had 5 consecutive months with profitability. In a couple of those months, a lot of profitability. But I haven't had a good January, and last weekend, I hit the low end of the spectrum. So expect me to bounce back in a big way. We're transparent on this channel. I'm definitely transparent. I always have been. I don't know any other way to be. Like I said, I beat on my chest when I win, but I own up when I lose. And all I could tell you is I would bet on me to turn it around sooner rather than later. All right, Paul. Couple intriguing matchups we need to discuss: the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore off that convincing win over Houston last week, while Kansas City, hey, give them credit. They went on the road and won. I guess you could say they were a bit fortunate, but by the same token, Buffalo just didn't do enough when it comes down to it. And Kansas City took advantage. So that's the third time in 4 years, Kansas City eliminated Buffalo. And then the other game, which we're going to talk about right now, is the San Francisco 49ers hosting the Detroit Lions. And boy, oh boy, Paul, you'd be hard pressed to tell me there was a better and more electric atmosphere anywhere than what we witnessed inside at Detroit at Ford Field in the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. Just absolutely gave me chills, the fans. And then when you consider the history of that franchise, in which they've had a lot more failures than successes. And you don't have to be an avid NFL fan to know that, but one hell of an atmosphere in both Detroit playoff games. But now they go on the road, different story, against a San Francisco team that barely escaped, in the win over Green Bay. I'm curious to know. I would bet anything. I didn't look, but I would bet anything you had Green Bay that game, because I just have that inkling. But anyway, take it away.
Well, I did have Green Bay because if you remember 2 weeks back, I emphasized how Dallas was overhyped, overrated, and that Green Bay would take care of business. And they did. And they actually shocked me to the upside, because I didn't expect them to take what was a 27-0 lead. But we gave out the team total over the 20.5. They got that early, and they got a relatively easy cover. Gave up some garbage yards at the end, but Green Bay certainly dominated. And they played admirably on Sunday. Look, they gave the 49ers all they can handle. There's a lot of people, including myself, that actually feel as though Green Bay should have won the game. And they should have, and they could have, but they didn't. And they pay off on the final result. San Francisco escapes with the win onto the NFC Conference Championship this week against these Detroit Lions, who, have been a great story. Now, I will tell you that the Lions, and I've been pounding this for the last 5 weeks, their defense, the back end is a fraud. Now, they've been getting away with it. I came on a few weeks ago, and I liked the Rams plus the 3.5. They got the cover. Unfortunately, they bogged down in the second half, and I think the loss at tight end, Tyler Higbee, was gimpy. I think that really hurt them. But ultimately, they could not get beyond the 23 points. We did lose the total. We won the side on that game. But in the last 5 games, the Detroit secondary, in terms of passing yards to the opposition, most recently Baker Mayfield, I think he had 349, 345, 367, and then to Nick Mullins, 393 and 411. They're not getting it done in the secondary. They're winning football games, and I think they've been very, very fortunate. Now, Brock Purdy has been going through some tough times. This is a guy that was in the lead for the MVP prior to the Raven game. Then he comes in, throws 4 interceptions, and it looks like the wheels have fallen off. But you know what? What's the cure for an ailing, underperforming quarterback? The Detroit secondary. And I believe he's going to have a lot of success here against this Lions defense. The Lions are going to have to score a lot of points to cover this football game, because if Deebo Samuel is in the lineup, I don't see San Francisco scoring less than 35 points, which means that if you're taking 7, you better get 28 or more. 28 would get you the push, and then you got to get into the 30s to get the cover. If all those weapons are in place, I just don't see this Lion defense putting the clamps on this offense. Now, defensively, we did see some weakness in the 49ers on Sunday. There is no question about it. Can Detroit score points? Yes, I believe they will. I do lean to the over in the game, but I do think San Francisco will get a cover. I've played several props on the game, and I think this is the time of year where the lines on these games are very tight. You have to look at the prop market, because value lies in the prop market. I had Baker Mayfield over 243, 253 on Sunday. He easily hurdled that number, and I think you will see a lot of passing from the Niners, as I said, successful at that. And I think Brock Purdy will go over his passing yardage total. I started to tinker with this at 261, 264. It's in the low 270s right now, and I still think he gets into the 300s. And I think the Lions have been very weak against tight ends. Now, as I mentioned, they caught a break against the Rams. Higbee was gimpy coming in. He ultimately went out with a serious injury at the end of the game, but they were bringing in Skoranek, who's a blocker, and then a guy by the name of Davis Allen that hadn't done anything. But prior to that, Johnny Munt, who was replacing Hawkinson, was the second leading receiver in the last game of the season with 5 receptions for 58 yards. And 2 prior, Hawkinson, who sustained an injury in that game when he took a hit by Kirby Joseph, he had 5 catches for 58 yards, and that was 2 minutes into the third quarter. They have not been successful stopping tight ends, and I think George Kittle will have a successful game. But you have to look at the Deebo Samuel injury, and if he's in the game, I think you can downgrade Ayuk a little bit. If he does not play, Ayuk should be a solid play here. And I think McCaffrey out of the backfield over 36.5 will also work. So I think you see the direction I'm going in this game. I like the 49er cover. I like points here. And anyway, that's where I'm going.
There you go. A lot to absorb there from Mr. Bovi, but all compelling points. And he makes a good point, especially on the Detroit pass defense. Their last 5 games, 319, 357, 359, 323, and 373 allowed. So that's 319 yards per game allowed passing.
Wait. Let me ask you something. Are you sure those numbers are right? 319?
Yeah, but this is accounting for the sacks in the game, the actual pass yards allowed. You know what I mean? You were naming off the quarterback stats.
Got it.
So there's a little bit of a difference there, you know.
Got it.
So
okay,
they've
fair
allowed
enough.
319 yards passing in each of their last 5 games. A lot of yards. Let's put it that way.
A lot of yards. Okay.
Yeah, and you wonder how they went 4-1 in those 5 games. Well, their turnover differential, they 4, 6, 8, 10. They were +7 over those 5 games in turnover differential. And that allowed them to escape with some wins there in games they probably didn't deserve to win. Now, the other part is in terms of points. You look at the Lions on the road of late. They gave up 38 at Baltimore, 38 at the Chargers, 28 at New Orleans, 28 at Chicago, 24 at Minnesota, and 20 at Dallas. So they're giving up points on the road as well. And San Francisco, even without Deebo Samuel, I think will have ample opportunity to move the ball here. I just, the Deebo Samuel thing, an old wise man also told me a long time ago, and it's not always held served, but it's held served the majority of the time. If a guy can't finish the game the week before, he's very unlikely to play in the following week. Now, that's in regular season action. As we well know, we've seen people play very banged up at this time of the year. So it would not shock me whatsoever to see Deebo Samuel play. And again, if he does play and San Francisco gets off to a big lead, I just question whether he will be sat because of his health concerns. Anyway, so there you have it in that game. If I have a lean in this game at this particular moment in time, I would lean going over the total. And I just think that Detroit's going to be able to run the ball a little bit in this game against San Francisco. It's going to open up some play action passing. And Detroit's going to be hard pressed to stop San Francisco. The only way that's going to occur, in my professional opinion, is if they create turnovers the way they've done of late. But if you take away that game that, Paul, you alluded to when he threw 4 interceptions against Baltimore and they turned the ball over 5 times, San Fran is not a team that's prone to turning the ball over. So I agree with all of his takes. Let's look at the next game, Paul. And that involves the game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Right now, as we speak, Baltimore is a 3.5-point favorite. The total here is 44.5. Let me get to my pick on this game, Paul, and then we'll let you chime in and retort to whatever I said or whatever you think about this matchup. But Baltimore, like I said, minus 3.5, 44.5. Here's the thing. These are the top 2 scoring defenses, and I'm going by regular season action. Top 2 scoring defenses during regular season action. Top 2 defenses in sacking the quarterback. Kansas City's number 2. Baltimore is number 6 in total defense. That's yards allowed per game. Baltimore, by NFL standards, is a very run-heavy team. And when I say that, they've run the ball 52.5% of their offensive plays this year, and that includes the playoffs. And, again, you have to factor in they have a very mobile quarterback, and they call quarterback or RPOs much more often than the traditional NFL offenses would do. And Baltimore's number 1 in rush offense at 156.5 yards per game. They ran the ball for 229 last week against Houston. Kansas City, when you look at their offense, they're much more balanced offensively than they've been in prior years. And part of that equation is they just don't have the explosive wide receivers they've had in the past, namely Tyreek Hill. But even more so over the last 4 games, they've run the ball 46.8% of their offensive plays. They ran the ball real effectively against Buffalo last week. And I think that we'll see similar type of run-pass splits here. Baltimore's quarterbacks have completed 65.5% of their passes this year. And Kansas City has played low-scoring affairs against teams like that. As a matter of fact, Kansas City 10-1 to the under this year when facing opponents to complete 64% or more of their passes. The Chiefs are also 7-0 to the under this year against explosive type offenses that average 6 or more yards per offensive play. Baltimore's at 6.1. Both teams, I think, are going to effectively run the ball in this matchup. And I think each will have a difficult time generating chunk plays offensively in a pass game. considering the fact that Kansas City's number 4 and Baltimore number 6 against the pass. I see a lot of clock-eating drives here, Paul. I see two teams that are going to be willing to run the ball, and I think both teams will have moderate to a lot of success in doing so, and in turn chew a lot of clock up. And I can also foresee some sustained drives that chew up a lot of clock and more than average drives being halted and settling for field goals. I mean, look at Kansas City. The first 2 playoff games this year against the first one against Miami, then against Buffalo, they settled for 6 field goals in the first 2 games. So I'm going to go under the total of 44.5 here, Paul. Your take?
I would agree with you, but I will say that you could definitely run the ball against the Ravens. Williams of the Rams, I think he ran for 114. Shane from the Dolphins, he ran for I think $107. And McCaffrey also was over 100. And these were on minimal carries, like 14 carries. There were some decent breakaway runs in those latter 2 games, but still, you can run the ball against the Ravens. So in order for Kansas City to be successful here, they're going to need a repeat performance from Pacheco, who's very successful against the Bills. Now, speaking of the Bills, I'm going to kind of throw out that game just because Buffalo had so many, they were ravaged on defense. Let's face it. When Bernard was declared out, that was a huge thing for the Bills because he is their main linebacker. And when Matt Milano went out earlier in the year, it became.
And Tyrell Dodson got hurt early in the game. So they were down to A.J. Klein calling signals on defense, and he was on the street on his couch.
Right.
About 2 weeks ago.
But Klein in the last few games had performed very admirably. So no shade against A.J. Klein. But when you look at the game, I mean, Travis Kelce, who in my opinion is headed south. This may be his last year, and if it's not his last, next year will be because, look, the guy's 34 years old. He was running unmolested over the middle. He only ended up.
Let me interrupt just for a second. And yes, A.J. Klein had played really well the week before. But if you watch the tape, okay, Kelce ran unmolested on a few occasions in which Klein was in coverage on him. So go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. He's relative to a guy who was on the couch and and there wasn't much expected. The guy's been, I'm not going to call him a tackling machine, but I think he had double-digit tackles and he's been getting it done. Okay.
Yes.
But he shouldn't be your main linebacker. And Kelce was just, he owned him. He only had 5 catches. He went under his catch total, but the guy had 75 yards. So I think you saw a side of the Chiefs that really distorted their ability on offense. Because if you look at the Raider game, okay, Oakland completely, Las Vegas completely held them in check. They had some success against Cincinnati, but Cincinnati is a porous defensive team. They had been all year. They just really never got anything truly going on offense. So it's going to be difficult on them. And if Pacheco doesn't run, I think it's going to be a long afternoon for them. But just feeding into what you say, I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. On the other side, look, I'm going to give Lamar Jackson credit. I know a lot of people like Lamar. I like Lamar. Lamar, you could see early on in the Texan game, he was going to take matters into his own hands and run the football. Okay, and I think that's where Lamar really excels, and that's where he has the most confidence in running the football. Does he want to throw downfield? Is he capable of throwing downfield? Yes. Is he a great downfield passer? No. Is he above average? Yes. Great? No. So I think you're going to see running by Lamar here. You might want to go over his rushing total. He's not going to hesitate to run. The Chiefs have done a solid job against the run. Against the Raiders, They did a fantastic job. Uh, let me backtrack. Zaire White was the lone game where they did not do a fantastic job, but they did great jobs against um, Joe Mixon on a couple of occasions. They do wonders stopping the run. They have a shutdown corner in Snead. So I really believe that this will be a lower scoring game. I played a few props here. I played largest lead under 14 and a half points. And I think what you might want to look at is if you can play a second half under in advance and get 21 and a half or better. The Chiefs do play to the low side in the second half. I think they've had 10, 7, 13. I don't know if I'm getting the numbers right, but they definitely play to the low side in the second half. I think you could play Pacheco over here. I think they will feed him the ball as much as they can. And as long as they stay close, they will continue to feed him the ball because, as you pointed out to Ross, or pointed out, they don't have much of an arsenal when it comes to receivers. So they're going to try to run the football, bleed the clock, shorten the game, stay in there, and win it late. And that's going to be their recipe for success. So I agree with you, Ross. I think this one stays under the total.
All right, so there's a great breakdown right there from Mr. Bovi. That doesn't surprise anybody who's been watching this channel for the entirety of the football season. Yeah, I mean, Kansas City went for 215 yards passing last week. And again, Paul, you brought up the injuries. I mean, that's against a Buffalo secondary that lost Tre'Davious White early in the year. They were out their another starting quarterback, Christian Benford, who hurt his knee in the opening playoff game in Buffalo's win. And then Rasul Douglas came back from injury, but he was playing half speed, and they still only threw for 215. And then the other thing, to me, Kansas City has had difficulty in finishing off drives of late. I mean, you look at the last 4 games. Cincinnati, they settled for 4 field goals. The Chargers, they settled for 2 field goals. Miami, they kicked 4 field goals, and Buffalo 2 field goals. So they're leaving a lot of points on the board while not finishing drives and running the ball effectively, which in turn chews up clock. And they've gone under the total in 4 of their last 5 games. And also they've gone under the total in 11 of their last 15 games. So they, as opposed to past Kansas City teams that we're used to seeing in high scoring affairs, it's a whole different philosophy. And give Andy Reid a lot of credit as he recognizes his team isn't as explosive in the pass game. And they ran the ball extremely well down the stretch. And Baltimore, we know, could run the ball. And both teams, as good as they are defensively, both are a little bit vulnerable against the run. If you look at their defensive numbers, and both are very difficult to pass on. So there you have it. I like Baltimore, Kansas City under 44 and a half. And Paul agrees with me on that. And Paul, why don't you go over your prop bets real quickly once again on the San Fran game for the viewers?
All right, sure. And by the way, I one more prop I'm going to add to that Raven game. I played the Ravens, which I do think they're going to win the game. Okay, I do think they're going to find a way to win, and I played them to win by 7 to 13 points at plus 350. Now, right now they're favored by 3.5. So if you were taking the Ravens and in lieu of laying the 3.5, your dangers in sacrificing a winning bet would be 4, 5, and 6, unless you think it's going to be a complete blowout, which I don't feel it will be. So that's something if you want to play around with something and get a multiple payoff, you can look at that because I think there's value there. As far as San Francisco goes, I went Purdy over. As I told you, I started at 261, 264, 267. He's in the 270s now, but I think this is playable up to 290. because I do think he's going to get over 300. Every other quarterback in the last 5 games has, and they have a very dynamic group of skill position players, starting with Christian McCaffrey, Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, tight end, and I don't think they're going to be able to stop him. I do have George Kittle over for reasons that I did mention. I have Ayuk over 75.5. That is strengthened if Deebo is out. It's weakened if Deebo is in. So those are three that I do have. I also played the team total on San Francisco over 28.5, and actually insured it with plus 250 for San Francisco to score 21-27. I'm screwed on 28, but I don't see him getting less than 21 points. At plus 250, I took a small play on that. So if they end up scoring 26 points, it will wipe out 3/4 of my loss. So there you have it. I mean, those are 4 of them. I'm comfortable with those. I'm going to look at a few
McCaffrey
more.
over 24.5 yards passing or pass yards?
I do. I did.
Yeah.
I did play McCaffrey over 36.5 because I remember Detroit does do a good job rushing the passer. So that's their strength. It's not the secondary. So I think Purdy will face a rush, and McCaffrey is good out of the backfield. The guy is an all-world back that is very versatile. He can catch passes, and he'll catch at least 2. And I think you'll see at least one long breakaway reception by Christian McCaffrey. He's very capable of that. So there you have 5 of them, 5 overs.
Yeah.
Some guys look for unders, but this is a game where I think you're going to see more overs than unders.
Absolutely. And, the one thing about Detroit's pass rush, too, it's been highly effective. And I don't want to take anything away from their accomplishments of rushing the passer this year. And yes, I give credence to exactly what you say with their pass rush. But a lot of their pressures have came because they've been in control of games. And teams have been one-dimensional against them in the second half because they're behind. But having said that, we saw last week was not a lopsided game, and their ability to get to the passer last week, they were quite effective in that regard. So, the one thing, and I'm interested to hear your take on this, Paul. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off.
I was just going to mention one thing, okay?
Yeah.
On that game last week. It was 10-10 at halftime. Now, Mike Evans made a great catch before the half, tied it. I was very fortunate. I had Bucks plus 3.5 in the first half. But he also dropped one.
Yeah.
And I just think that Tampa Bay really lost a lot when they had some injuries in their secondary in the second half, because they basically had Detroit under wraps. They were actually outgaining them by 100 yards at one point. And then I think it was Jamal Dean that went out, and they brought a guy in that had very limited experience. I forgot his name.
He had a lot of playing time, but he was exposed all year. He had a lot of playing time because of injury. Limited experience in terms of years in the league. In terms of playing time this year, that wasn't the case. He had more than average because he was a backup. He did get a lot of action because of injury. So anyway, go ahead.
That's
Paul.
true. That is true, because Tampa came into the game. Yeah. I added it up, and they had most of their guys healthy, but guys that were out of the lineup, like Vita Vea and cornerbacks, a couple cornerbacks, if you added them up, key players were out for 21 games. So they got very healthy, as was the case with Green Bay when they played Dallas the week prior. But when they lost guys in their secondary, integral parts, I really think it hurt them. And at that point, Jared Goff was able to tee off. They had some difficulty initially guarding Laporta, but they weren't getting it to the wideout. So anyway, that's basically the way I see it. Now you're going to ask me a take on something.
Yeah, I got two questions for you. Basically it's a comment, and then I want your response more than a question. How's that? Houston's defense last week, their defensive game plan was extremely flawed in my estimation. Uh, they played man to man for the majority of the game, and when you play man to man, your defensive backs are to the play. And you have the most mobile quarterback in the NFL. Yes, I love Josh Allen, but he's not as elusive or as mobile as Lamar Jackson. I think that most would agree with that. Now you're playing man to man, and you're not leaving a spy in the middle of the field. And how many of those scrambles in which he went for over 100 yards were right down the middle and nobody in sight for 10 to 15 yards defensively? I thought their game plan was flawed. The other part that I wanted to bring up to you, and then I want you to comment on, is I've been beating this to death for the last 2 years on this show. And that's when not to go for 2 points, and why you would go for two down 8 because the analytics tells you so is mind-boggling to me. Okay, so basically what you're saying is we're going to go for 2, and if we don't make it, then we're going to go for 2 again, and we'll have a chance to tie. If we do make it, we only need to kick the extra point for the win. Now, why wouldn't you just make it a 7-point game, okay, and then roll the dice if you have an opportunity to win late in the game? Why go for 2, leave yourself still down 8? I don't get it. And the other, really, my pet peeve, and I've saw McDermott do this on 2 separate occasions over the years for Buffalo, because I'm an avid follower there. Namely, one was against Baltimore in a regular season game a few years ago. And they're down 9, and teams down 9 go for 2 because the analytics tell them to. How stupid is that? Especially late in the game.
I don't get that.
Yeah, I mean, in the particular instance I'm mentioning, they were down 9 with less than 6 minutes to play at home against Baltimore. They went for 2, and I was criticizing, and they made it. And certainly people around me is going, see, that's why you go for 2. Well, it's stupid. It's stupid because now there's 5.5 minutes to go. If you miss the 2-point conversion down 9, it's a 2-score game. Now you got 5 minutes to get the ball back twice, and you have to score twice when you do get the ball back. Secondly, what does it do for the mental aspect of the game? Because now when you're down 2 with 5 minutes, now you got to play with desperation. You got to take unnecessary chances. You may have to onside kick with 5.5 minutes to go, and if you're unsuccessful, now you're giving them great field position. It's just mind-boggling to me, Paul. And I get the analytics, okay? I do, okay? But to me, if you base every decision as a head coach in the NFL strictly on analytics, like a million times, you're going to be sitting in a box with people who do the analytics, and that will be your job, and it won't be as a head coach in the NFL. All right, just your takes on both subjects.
First of all, on the 9 to 7, look, to me, that's ridiculous. But a lot of people's opinion will always be results based.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
you could easily criticize the result, but I mean, criticize it beforehand or praise it beforehand.
Yeah.
But that's a square take. People, they grade things.
And let me just, if I can interject, here's the analogy that I use. It's like trying to catch a middle straight on the river card. You know what I mean? Is it possible? Yeah. Is it probable? No. Is it the most intelligent thing to do? I guess if the result is good, like you just said. But when you're working in probabilities, I just don't see where that. Anyway, go ahead, Paul.
I just can't embrace that. I can't wrap my arms around it. I can't wrap my brain around it. But look, coaches, I've come to the conclusion that coaches generally lack in certain areas, that a lot of them are X's and O's guys. And when it comes down to certain aspects of the game, they might fall short. Okay. And there was a whole debate about whether Todd Bowles should have called a timeout at the end of the game, made Detroit kick a field goal. And I just, look, there's things I question and I can't answer. As far as the analytics on the 7 point and going for two, I understand that if you break this down and is a 51.5% probability or benefit versus 48.5%, I understand why you do it. Just like when you play blackjack, you play perfect strategy, although you
Yeah.
may not agree with the move. So I just like, you may have a guy may show an ace and you're sitting there splitting eights, or
Yeah. Yeah.
but the book
Yeah.
tells you to do it, so you got to do it. I personally, maybe I'm old school, maybe I'm the guy under the rock.
I'm with you.
I
I'm with
I
you.
would have kicked the points.
Yeah.
I would have
Here's my
kicked
counterpoint to what the thinking is that you just brought up. And I'm not saying you agree with that thinking. Okay. All right. So it's 51.5% chance of making a two as opposed to 48.5% not making it. That's what the results show over the years, a larger sample size.
No, no,
What's
no, no,
the
no. What I was
okay,
saying is is a benefit to doing it that afford you a 1.5% edge versus kicking the extra point. However, it's at the end of the day, at the when it comes out in the wash. So whether you make it or not. So that's kind of what I was referring to. It's a
I got you.
if
I
there
got
is an edge, it's the slimmest of margins. But the
you. Right.
guys will always say, some people will lean on that like a card counter. He's got a 2% edge. And he'll always say, hey, when
Yeah.
the deck's in our favor, it's in our favor. And you have to play it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and again, there's a point where the human element has to come in too.
Right.
And yes, those are laws of probability that are based on a huge sample size over a long period of time. Um, my counterpoint to the going for two in that particular situation. Now, I probably would not have a problem in the world if they went for two if they're down 7, they score a touchdown with less than a minute to go on the road. I don't have an issue with them going for two. Okay, but what's the probability of making a 2 point conversion from the 2 yard line? I would say it's a good probability. It's probably better than average. Okay, so let's even say I don't know what the conversion rate is over the years. I'm not that smart, but I would estimate teams have converted somewhere around 60% of their 2 point conversion attempts, as opposed to a extra point. An extra point is what? What would you estimate the conversion rate is on extra points in the NFL through the course of a season over the last 5 seasons? Well, somewhere around 97, 98%. I mean,
Yeah,
am I being
well,
smart?
I would say maybe a little less since they moved it back. So
Right.
I'm going to
Okay.
say like 93.6% or something
Okay.
like that.
So
Okay.
much higher a
Yeah.
probability of being successful on kicking an extra point as opposed to a 2 point conversion. So if you have a 93.7% chance of converting on an extra point to make it a 7 point game, as opposed to, let's say, I don't know, is 60% a fair number on 2 point conversions? I'm not sure.
I'm not
I'm
sure.
estimating. Yeah. So even if it is in the best case scenario, 60%, now instead of now you're asking somebody to convert 2 point conversions. You missed one. I guess you're due on the next one. I just don't get it. I mean, again, and I look at the mental aspect too, what it does to a team's frame of mind if you don't convert, and the desperation and urgency and anxiety it creates.
You
So
know what?
that's me. Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I The reason I was very surprised is that you look at a coach and you kind of just try to dig into his mindset. And usually the younger guys are going to be more aggressive and more in tune with analytics. So you look at a guy like Todd Bowles, and he seems like a conservative, laid back, older guy and I just didn't think he fit the prototype, if you know what I'm saying.
It's
So
because he's got people in his ear that he's depending solely for on analytics. I'm convinced, Paul. That's not
yeah,
coming from Todd Bowles. That's not him saying, okay, the game is played like this now as opposed to what I was used to 10 years ago. The NFL teams have spent a lot of money on analytics department. And these head coaches now are really, really pressured to utilize what the team or franchise is paying for in that particular department. I think that has a lot to do with it. They're making decisions solely based on analytics. Look at the guy from the Chargers. How many stupid, we would consider
right.
stupid risks he took just solely based on analytics. And what's he doing right now? He's unemployed, and he probably can get a good job in the analytics department of an NFL team because that's all, solely what he followed in his decision process over the years. All right, real
Yeah, Brent.
quickly,
Yeah, I
Houston.
got no.
Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna make. Yeah, I'm gonna make that comment on Lamar Jackson. Look, we all know if you play man to man, your back is going to be turned to the line of scrimmage, oftentimes.
Exactly,
So you better have a spy
and
against
they
a
had
guy like
none.
Lamar Jackson. That's just doesn't make any sense. Now,
Did you see
Houston's
what I
def
saw? Did you see what I saw? Did you, in your view, when they were playing man to man, was the middle of the field wide open with no spy? Do
I
you recall that?
I I probably didn't pick up on that
Watch the tape.
right
Watch
away.
the tape. I would tell you. Yeah.
I know that he had 100 yards rushing, and I know he
Yeah.
was.
I'm not taking
It,
anything away from that, Paul. Okay.
yeah, I'm not
He-
taking anything away from it. He did.
yeah.
Look, you take what the defense gives you, and if they were giving him the
Yeah.
ability to run the ball, that's probably why there was absolutely no hesitation from the start. So maybe they should have made a correction, and maybe they
They
did
made
because
none.
in the
Yeah.
second half, he was much more effective throwing the football, and he threw it more frequency because in the first half he had like 50 yards of passing, which against the
Yeah.
Texans secondary was, in my opinion, inexcusable because this is a secondary which made Zach Wilson look like Tom Brady. Zach Wilson
Yeah.
had over 300 yards and a 119 rating. They weren't good throughout the year, and which is why they're going to face a tougher test this week. But credit Lamar Jackson because you take what the defense gives you, and if they clamp down on the run in the first half, he threw the ball better in the second half. I think he had about 90 yards or 100 yards, and but they did what they had to do to win the football game, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I just think it was a flawed defensive game plan from Houston. Yes, I agree. They are susceptible to the pass, and I get that. Okay. But if you're going to play man to man, you're going to have to rush one less guy. That's all I can tell you. And you're going to have to, if you're going to play man to man, you're trusting your secondary to start with, correct? I mean, you don't play man to man if you don't think you got good matchups on the outside or in the slot. And if you're going to do that, then realize the caliber of quarterback you're playing against, you know? And if you look at the tape, and, the more I think a lot of that did occur in the first half. And then by the time you made the adjustment, you're down 2 scores, you know? So I don't know. If you want to see a team, and again, I'm going to sound like a homer, but the defensive schemes that Buffalo has used against Lamar Jackson the last 3 times Buffalo has played them is the way you play Lamar Jackson. You have a spy in the middle, and if you look at the stats in his 3 games against Buffalo in the last 3 matchups, I could only go by that's what I recall because I saw the game, and then I look inside the numbers and I say, why are they having success against Lamar Jackson where most teams don't? And what I saw from Houston is the counterintuitive of what you want to do defensively against Lamar Jackson. I'll be interested because Willie Gay got hurt last week, and he's a guy that they always use as a spy against opposing quarterbacks that are mobile. So I'll be very surprised if Spagnuolo's too good of a defensive coordinator. I just don't see him leaving them that vulnerable in that regard. Lamar is tough enough to control without leaving the middle of the field wide open where he could take off, and there's nobody within 10 to 15 yards that is willing to make contact with him or able to make contact with him in that regard. Anyway, we went on a little too long on that, but got to get it off my chest, and who better to talk to than Mr. Bovi? I know, you know what I like about Paul? He's not afraid to challenge me. He's not afraid to disagree with me. And I guess Craig and Jesse do the same thing. And you should learn from this, folks. You know, when you make your comments in the comment section, there's a way to disagree with somebody respectfully. And you're going to get a hell of a lot more respect with your opinions if you do it in a respectful manner. And look, we could be on the wrong side of picks. We could be on the wrong side of philosophies in terms of our approach. But we respect each other because at this stage, if you've been doing it this long like we have, we're doing something right. We might be doing it differently, but at the end of the day, we're both doing something right. In any event, Paul, what do you got coming up this week you could share with the audience? I know you got out some NBA yesterday. People should be aware of that.
I did, and I was big on the NBA for quite some time, and I will say I'm a 36-year Knicks season ticket holder. I don't go to a lot of games anymore, but yeah, I love the NBA. I formerly did a podcast with Tim Donaghy for quite some time, and anyway, so I will be posting some NBA since the football season has wound down. And like I said before the show, I needed a new toy to play with. And we won 1 and 2 last night. We had both those losses. We were winning. They were first half plays, and unfortunately they chucked it and we didn't get it. The Bulls did cover for us against Phoenix. Also chucked a big lead, but were in under the number.
17-point lead at the half. Yeah.
Yeah, thankfully I didn't take the money line because I would have been raging when I got up in the morning. I would have, probably thrown the computer and sworn off the
Only
NBA.
in the NBA, Paul. Only in the NBA.
And that's the second time the Bulls blew a close game to Phoenix this year. They have to be really ticked off at themselves. They had a 115-111 lead in the first game and blew the game in overtime 116-115. Then you blow that game last night. But we'll have some NBA up there, and I do start to look at the association now, and I've had a history of success there. So, let's see what we come up with, and let's make some money this weekend.
There you go. And I just want to let everybody know, Paul's had a lot of success in the NBA in years past, and it's not because he had a relationship with Tim Donaghy. I just want to let everybody know that. In any event, I also had the Chicago Bulls yesterday, and like I said, a little bit of anxiety there. 17-point lead at the half, getting 5, and luckily Phoenix scored, I think, with a second to go to get the lead in that game. Which, look, a win is a win. We were getting to 5 points, and that's all that matters. So. You can find me over at gamblersworld.net. Don't forget, folks, that's where you will be credited if you don't make a profit or win. So quite simply put, all single game and multi-game daily packages and all subscription plans of 30 days or fewer, you must win, you must make a profit, or your account will be credited the exact amount of your purchase price. Also, folks, don't forget, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, take a second to do so. You'll see that black subscribe button right underneath you. Click on that. It's absolutely free. No strings attached, no hidden agenda. And also, if you're on your PC, you won't see a black subscribe button, but you will see a WC logo in the bottom right-hand corner. Just click on that. It'll serve the same purpose. And for those of you who have subscribed, we appreciate each and every one of you. We've had over 400 subscribers over the last 28 days. We're elated with that. We'd like to thank you all for your continued support. But my point is, if you have subscribed and you haven't done this, and you're new and you just subscribed, go into your YouTube settings and click on the alert notification bell for the Winner's Circle Sports Betting channel, and you'll be alerted immediately upon any of our 6 weekly podcasts going up on this channel. Don't forget to give us a like, just a small token of your appreciation for the work, time, and effort we put into giving you a quality podcast like today and to make you a smarter sports better today than you were yesterday. Paul will be back with me not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, and he'll be discussing some Super Bowl props with us at that time. And I will be back tomorrow with just Sean Higgs. Tomorrow we'll be talking college basketball. Thursday with Doug Upstone, we'll be talking college basketball at that time. And then, of course, Friday, still up in the air to be announced. We're going to decide what we're going to do on Friday. I believe we're going to change the day of our live broadcast, so stay tuned for that. But for Paul Bovi and Ross Benjamin, take care and God bless, folks.